Fine, I'll keep this one. This is supposed to be an Unhaul. All of these books are not going to fit into one box. I've already quickly realized none of them are fitting into this box. Pretty sure she didn't finish it, and I shouldn't have either. I really did not like that book. Also, if you think this will now give me a lot of room on my shelves, it does not. Hello lovely bookworms, I'm Esmay from Paradise of Pages on Instagram and also on Twitter, and welcome to a new video. Today is going to be a hectic one because I'm quite literally surrounded by books. I mean, I usually am, but today I'm filming an unhaul. Quite honestly, I'm not sure which one of these books I might have already shown you in a previous unhaul because I have failed to unhaul them and I have not shown or not looked back on them. So that's okay. I have quite a... Shall I count them just for funsies? I have 33 books, I think, surrounding me right now. Some of them are series, some of them are alone, some of them... Anyway, I all have a reason to unhaul these, and let's just quickly get started because a couple of them are balancing on my leg as we speak. I am not going to talk too much about these. I'll quickly mention why I'm getting rid of them, but let's just dive right into it. I'm going to start with the stack that's in front of me, and that's 3 books. I'm going to get rid of the Snow Like Ashes series by Sarah Rash. So I have Snow Like Ashes, Ice Like Fire, and Frost Like Night. These 3 I have read. They were fine, but they're not one of my absolute favorites, so I'm gonna home them, rehome them, and get rid of them, and maybe someone else will love them a lot more than I will. So those ones. Next up I have An Ember in the Ashes and A Torch Against the Night by Saba Tahir. These 2 are the first 2 books in the An Ember in the Ashes quartet, and I actually own the very beautiful Fairy Loot set that I've gotten from Femke and Sari, so I'm gonna get rid of these. I don't need extra paperback copies. I have the beautiful hardcover edition, and if I will reread them, I'll probably listen to an audio anyway, so getting rid of these. Next up I have Daughter of the Burning City by Amanda Foody. This is a book that I have read. I thought it was fine up until a certain point where something happened that I really didn't like, so yeah, I've read it once, never gonna reread it. Don't necessarily like the cover either, so it's not like I need the book in my collection, so I'm gonna unhaul it. Next up is another trilogy, and that is The Valiant, The Defiant, and The Triumphant by Leslie Livingston, if I remember correctly. Yeah, Leslie Livingston. This is about a woman who is basically kidnapped and then forced into a life of being a gladiator. These were fun, these were interesting. The final book was definitely a letdown for me, but I've read them, never gonna reread them, so gonna give these a new home. I've already quickly realized none of them are fitting into this box. Next up I have Everless by Sarah Holland. I loved the premise of this. I really enjoyed the first book, and the second book was just not it for me, so I finished both of these, so I'm not gonna reread them and I'm gonna get rid of it. Then I have Silence by Becca Fitzpatrick. I think this is the 2nd or 3rd book in the Hush Hush series. I've never read the Hush Hush series. I actually acquired this someplace, and I'm never gonna read these, so I don't need it and I'm gonna unhaul it. All of these books are not gonna fit into one box. Next up I have Mortlock and the Bonehill Curse by John Mayhem. Same thing as with Silence. I picked these up someplace, never gonna read them. I mean, I do really like the edges on this one. I mean, it's a cool book, I just don't particularly care. I think this is also the 3rd one, I think. Yeah, the Demon Collector's the 2nd one. Apparently I don't own that one, but gonna get rid of these. Next up, the most recent book that I've acquired, and that is Portrait of a Thief by Grace D. Lee. This is a book that I've gotten from Illumicrate, but I have no interest in reading whatsoever, so I'm gonna give this a new home. I'm pretty sure someone else will love this a lot more, be a lot more interested in this than I am. If I ever want to read it, I'll just buy the ebook, but I just don't need this copy. Then moving on, I have The Guinevere Deception by Kristen White. Kirsten White, I'm sorry. This is a sort of, well, it's a Guinevere retelling kind of thing, but twisted. I didn't really enjoy this one. I don't really like the ending, and it just, the writing style was not necessarily for me, and so I don't need this copy. I don't think I'm going to continue this series either, so I'm gonna unhaul this. Moving on to a book that I was gifted by a friend but really disliked. I think I vlogged about this quite a while ago, maybe 2 years ago, and that is The Pharmacist's Wife by Vanessa Tate. I love the cover, it's absolutely beautiful, which is probably why my friend bought it. She didn't like it either, so I'm unholding it. I'm pretty sure she didn't finish it, and I shouldn't have either. I really did not like that book. Moving on, another book that I really enjoyed but I'm not going to reread, and I kind of don't like what they did with the series, and that is The Lost Namzara by Kristen Ciccarelli. This is a book about a woman who I think kills demons or dragons. She's a dragon slayer, and I really enjoyed the first book, but the second book follows a different character, so I'm not that interested. It was an okay book, but it wasn't anything special, so I'm not going to reread it, so it can go. Also, if you think this will now give me a lot of room on my shelves, it does not. Next up, it might be a little bit of a controversial one, but that is Legendborn by Tracy Dion. This is a book that I've read, but I just did not enjoy at all because it's urban fantasy. I think it's a really good book, but it's just not something that I resonate with. I'm not going to continue the series, so I'm gonna unhaul it. Speaking of a book that I just am not interested to read is The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue by Mackenzie Lee. I've had this for absolute years. Like, I think I got this maybe 2017, something along those lines. I'm just not interested in reading this at all. I'm not going to pick it up, and so I think it deserves a better home. Speaking of a book I've read, I'm not planning to reread, is Ruby Red by Kirsten Heer. This is a translation of a German book, and I read the first one. It was fine. Like, I enjoyed it, but it's not one of those books that I am still obsessed with. I would have loved this a lot more were I a lot younger. And while I think it's a good book, it's just not in my specific preference right now, if that makes sense. So I'm gonna rehome it, and someone else will love this a lot more than me. Speaking of a book that I was really sad about is Vespertine by Margaret Rogerson. I actually read this during DESERTATHON, and I remember because Ro actually told me not to finish it because she did, and she didn't like it, and her followers told her not to finish it, and then they told me not to finish it. I finished it, didn't like it, so I'm gonna unhaul it. That's the short story. This was just not for me. I'm kind of sad with what they did with the story because it had so much potential, but I kind of missed quite a couple of things in this book, so that's that. Then the book that kind of got me into reading in English, and that is The Fault in Our Stars by John Green. This is one of those books that I don't think I'll ever reread. I sobbed my eyes out when I read it first. I've read it multiple times since then. I just don't need this copy. I think that The Fault in Our... Ooh. There's something in here. Okay. Apparently, I was so obsessed that I made these little cloudy things. Okay. Okay. I'll take those out. But I just don't need this book. Now I'm tempted to keep it because of how obsessed I was with it. Fine, I'll keep this one. This is supposed to be an unhaul, Esmay. This is supposed to be an unhaul, not you deciding or changing your mind about things. We're keeping this one. I want to reread it, maybe see what I think of it then. I hate myself. Alright, moving on. Alright, moving on to books I will unhaul. I have The Candle and Flame by Nafisa Azad. This is a desert read, and I just didn't like it because I feel like the only way in which our main protagonist got powerful was by changing who she was completely. It's a beautiful book on the outside, but it just wasn't for me, so I'm gonna unhaul it. Then I have a box set. I'm pretty sure I already mentioned this in the last unhaul, but I haven't yet unhauled it, so I'm gonna mention it again, and that is The Fifth Season by N.K. Jemisin. I read the first one, started the second one, and I just don't like this at all. This is not for me. I don't like the first person narrative. Yeah, I don't like it, so I'm gonna unhaul it, which I'm sad about because I actually expected to love this a great deal more than I did, but it's a beautiful book set, so I am going to rehome these. I have a fairy loot book here, and that is Fire and Heist by Sarah Beth Durst. This is something dragons. I think I DNF'd it, or I rush read through it, I didn't like it at all. So this tiny little one is gonna go away. Speaking of a book that I was quite sad about, I am talking about Empress of All Seasons by Emiko Jean. This has such an interesting premise. It's about someone who has to go through all of these trials, but I think the trials are rushed. The love story is sort of the main focus of this. There's just a lot of things that could have been better in this book. I think it is beautiful, but I didn't really like the content, so I'm gonna give you another home. I then have a trilogy that I have first read years and years ago, and I just don't need to keep them. And that is the Darkest Minds trilogy by Alexandra Bracken. Yes. These are also something I want to say. These are heavier than your regular paperback. These are so heavy. When I compare these to... Where's the other? Oh, I put the other trilogy away. But these are so heavy. Like, I cannot tell you how heavy they are. But I think they're beautiful, and I really enjoyed reading them, even for an apocalyptic sort of contemporary fantasy kind of thing. But I'm never going to reread them. I don't care that much about them. So they're gonna go, no matter how beautiful I think they are. I think I actually have 2 more books left to show you. So let's continue on with one that I'm gonna unhaul because it's a double, and that is Our Violent Delights by Chloe Gong. This is the sequel to These Violent Delights. Also, what did it call this book? It's called Our Violent Ends. But this is the sequel to These Violent Delights. I actually got gifted a copy of this book by Lore, so I decided to get rid of my own copy and keep the one that I was gifted. So this is gonna go. Not because I don't want to keep the book, but because I don't need 2 copies of the exact same book. And then finally, I have a book that I'm unhauling because I'm just not going to read it again. This is a mystery, a murder mystery that I think was fine, but I'm never going to read it again. So I'm going to get rid of One by One by Ruth Ware. This is one of the only books by Ruth Ware that I have enjoyed so far. The other ones I've read weren't my absolute favorites. I want to read some more by her, see if they're all hit or miss, but I enjoyed it. I'm never going to read it again, so I'm going to unhaul it. I think those were all 33 of the books. I tried to go through them a bit in rapid succession, not telling you what they are about, because otherwise this video would have been a mile a minute. Very, very long. Also, I feel like I rambled quite enough already, so I want to thank you all so much for watching. Please subscribe to our channel and press that little bell icon so you get post notifications every single time that we post, and I hope to see you all in the next one. Bye!